Here's an American songwriter who has been more prolific than I'm even aware of. He began in the 70s at some point and was still going in the early 2000s. Most of what I know is his involvement with Carol Bear Sager and a couple of solo albums he did between 1977 and 1980. I am talking about Bruce Roberts, and from his 1980 album, the title track, the ingeniously titled Cool Fool. Almost sounding like Chuck Mangione right here. That definitely got a classic West Coast setup right here with the, the arrangements and all. And it was kind of like a bait and switch there.
Oh, such a big thing to overcome. My compulsion to be the only one. Though you say you love me, they're only words to me.
Though you say you love me, they're only words to me.
Just a confrontation with my passion to disbelieve. Oh,
Just a confrontation with my passion to disbelieve.
baby, I ain't fool enough to love you. I ain't fool enough to lose you. But I ain't fool enough to fool you. So just say you love this
Let's see. I ain't cool enough to love you. I ain't fool enough to lose you. I ain't cool enough to fool you. Interesting play on words.
seems like such a waste of time.
I love how in these West Coast AOR type numbers, each repetition is given a different twist. It's like given more emphasis with each new like iteration. Like you get to the second verse, like say like a verse, the first verse before the first chorus, the verse will be divided into two parts. The first will be subdued or something. The second will be slightly more like closed cadence, maybe something in the rhythmic section and then by after you have the chorus and it returns to the verse will now be accented with additional musicians or something. It'll be more like a standing affair, like a seated playing affair or something.
Think the schemes that undermine.
Horns.
Stop, I tell myself. Stop for someone else who might never see. Through the clouds of suspicion, keep me missing what is best for me.
Clouds of suspicion keep me missing what is best for me. I love his like twerpy sounding vocals. They not only do they suit the bespected crooner's image, he was more of a songwriter than a performer. Like I don't know if he initially harbored serious intentions of being an interpreter, a performer of his own songs, a recording artist, or if that was just kind of secondhand. If the whole time it was more destined to be like an Albert Hammond approach, where you record your songs as demonstrations for the industry. Producers hear them. You get contacts and other people ultimately record your songs. People perhaps with more star power or more charisma or more, who have it more in them to go the long haul as recording artists, and they'll ultimately take your songs to fame. As many have. I guess he's written quite a lot of hits. He's written for movies, TV. His name was popping up on some of those Mouseketeer albums in the early 90s. This song right here, I believe, was covered at some point by Rita Coolidge. I don't know if I don't think he made another album for years after this.
I ain't cool enough to love you. I ain't cool enough to lose you. But I ain't cool enough to fool you. Just say you love this fool.
So just say you love this fool. I love the way it drops into that G section. Doom, boom, 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 boom. That right after the as it's just resolving from the chorus. It has an almost like Gotta Be Real, like Cheryl Lynn type feel, like right in that juncture. It over there's I hear a bit of an overlap in the music. There's got to be some of these backup musicians have got to be similar as having played maybe Cheryl Lynn or even like the what's the song that Gotta Be Real is derivative of. Best of My Love by the Emotions. I wonder if all three of them have at least one or two players in common. Let's see. It's interesting how Discogs doesn't have a lot of information on this album, no matter what entry you look up for this title. But I don't think I've ever seen this before. The credits are just one big paragraph with no specifications, but there's some familiar names. We got Ian Underwood. Mr. Ian Underwood rips it out. I never, when he played with Frank Zappa, it was only years later, like 30 years after first encountering that title, that it dawned on me the double entendre. Ian Underwood whips it out. Referring, of course, to a keyboard solo, but it could also be taken another way. Leland Sklar, or as I just think of him, Lee Sklar, plays bass on this album. Maxine Waters, the vocalist from the Waters family, is credited on here. Stephanie Spruill, yeah, I recognize that name. Did that? That's one I haven't gotten to yet. That duet album she did. Let's see. The always reliable Paulino da Costa, Bruce Sedano, David Foster, Gene Page. Yeah. There's some a lot of those West Coast people. Even if there's no members of Toto on here. See, now we're on the third verse, and they're adding even more detail. Now, like, backing vocalists are coming in to double up on certain words. That very West Coast trick of, like, adding emphasis to certain words. say this is more rock than I expected from him. It's more funky. When I first heard, because for years I had known about his first album from '77, which had some overlap with one of the artists he was working with, Carol Bayer Sager. They both put out albums. Interestingly, both of those artists came out doing their own albums. They had each been around in the industry for a while, but they each around the same time finally decided to make albums of their own in 1977. In fact, Carol Bayer Sager had already been around for 11 years at that point. She had written a song for the Mindbenders, co-wrote one back in '66, and only in '77 she put out her first album. I believe there was one song maybe in common between those two, but it's been a long time since I looked at the credits of the Bruce Roberts album. I do know he had a version of a song on there that this song, I Don't Want to Know, something like that, that was covered by Samantha Sang on her Emotion album. I knew hers before I knew his. It's an interesting find. But it was a very soft, like MOR cabaret album. Just like Carol Bayer Sager's first album, well, with the exception of the two kind of disco cabaret hits of hers from that album, from her first album. But overall, a very mellow affair. And here he is in 1980. Actually, I would compare this progress, say, to that of Stephen Bishop. Stephen Bishop, his Careless album, very mellow, as was the follow-up. But then in 1980, he employs more of that kind of funky downtown West Coast, like LA sound. Like, still very slick, but has a bit of a funkier, kind of up-tempo, and slightly more aggressive in the vocals, slightly edgier lyric-wise. Yeah, just what a difference 3 years can make, 1977 to 1980. I believe those are probably the Water Sisters that we're hearing, some of those female. I like the way the female backing vocals are interjecting. Whatever the limitations of his voice may have been, I like the way that he was ad-libbing toward the end and getting more expressive that way. Yeah. A very nuanced song, very well written, got kind of melodic, clever lyrics, tasteful arrangements, and slightly funky turns here and there. Bruce Roberts, Cool Fool, from the album of the same name. His second album as a recording artist. And he would do 3 albums overall. Let's see. He would later, I guess, start wearing contacts. He's funny enough. He's actually not that bookish or meek-looking of a guy when, particularly in the '90s era photo. But saying all that aside, let's see. His first single, according to Discogs, is A New Kind of Feeling. So he was at least a 5-year veteran by the time he decided to start recording. And ultimately, I guess, went on to become more like an Albert Hammond or David Pomeranz, someone who, or heck, you could kind of put Russ Ballard or Ian Thomas in that way, although they really were more credible as recording artists in their own right in the long run, even if they're primarily known as writers of hits for other people. And even if Bruce Roberts never quite pulled it off in the long run, he did turn out some good recordings of his own. And this being an example. And for more art pop and blue-eyed soul from the United States, see the album directory in the description. And until next time, like and subscribe. This is Zaragon, the world's most ear-traveled trimaximalist, signing off.